Everything about this moment for the Pittsburgh Steelers points toward a very intentional approach to the future, and it starts with how the draft board is being imagined for 2026. Looking at this 7-round mock draft, what stands out immediately is not just the individual names, but the clear philosophy behind each selection. This is about surrounding the quarterback with answers, rebuilding structural weaknesses, and preparing the roster for both immediate contribution and long-term stability. This is not a fantasy exercise built on hype, but a roadmap that tries to reflect what this team actually needs if it wants to compete seriously again. The first-round selection sets the tone. My Lemon, wide receiver out of USC, is viewed here as one of the most complete receiver prospects to enter the draft in several years. The emphasis is not just on speed or size, but on route running, timing, reliability, and toughness. Lemon is described as a receiver who understands how to tempo his routes, who creates separation with precision, and who consistently wins at the catch point despite not being a towering presence. His contested catchability, his comfort work in the middle of the field, and his ability to finish along the sideline all point to a receiver who can be trusted in critical moments, within the context of an offense potentially led by Aaron Rodgers. Lemon fits cleanly into a West Coast structure that values catch-and-run opportunities but does not limit itself vertically. This pick is about giving the quarterback someone who can move the chains immediately and expand the offense beyond what it was previously capable of. The logic continues into round 2 with the selection of Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, a safety out of Toledo. This is presented as one of the most complete safeties in the class, someone whose film jumps off the screen once you dive into it. The appeal here is versatility and range, and how Warren could fit into Patrick Graham's defensive system. When you imagine him alongside Deshaun Elliott and Jalen Ramsey, the idea is a secondary that can punish offenses for attacking the middle of the field. This is a pick rooted in defensive identity, speed, intelligence, and physical presence. All things the Steelers have historically valued when building the backbone of their defense. In round 3, the focus shifts to linebacker with Jake Goldie out of Cincinnati. At 240 pounds with high-end athleticism, Goldie is described as a sideline-to-sideline player who also brings a level of physicality that complements lighter linebackers already on the roster. The context here matters. There is a real possibility that Patrick Queen could be released, which would create both a financial benefit and a significant on-field void. Goldie is framed as a potential every-down linebacker, someone who could eventually wear the green dot and become the defensive communicator. This is not just depth, but a projection toward leadership and stability in the middle of the defense. Still, in round 3, the attention turns to the defensive line with Darrell Jackson Jr., a true nose tackle out of Florida State weighing over 330 pounds. One of the recurring criticisms of recent Steelers defenses is the absence of a legitimate anchor at nose tackle. Instead of forcing players into roles they were not built for, this pick addresses that issue directly. Jackson is someone who can hold the line of scrimmage, occupy blockers, and allow the rest of the defensive front to function more freely. Plugged in next to Cam Hayward and rotating with other defensive linemen, this selection is about fixing a foundational flaw and making the run defense better immediately. The final pick inside the top 100 comes at number 99 with Logan Jones, an interior offensive lineman out of Iowa. Jones brings versatility, having played center in college, while projecting as a potential guard at the NFL level. With Zach Frazier already at center, the idea is that Jones could compete for the left guard spot or provide high-quality depth while developing under James Cannon. This is a classic Steelers-style pick, prioritizing toughness, intelligence, and long-term offensive line stability over flash. All of this builds a clear narrative. The Steelers, in this mock, are attacking premium positions early, giving immediate help to the quarterback, reinforcing the spine of the defense, and preparing for contract-driven roster changes before they become emergencies. There is a balance between win-now urgency and future planning, which is exactly where this franchise finds itself, based on everything you've just heard so far. How do you feel about the direction of these early picks and the overall vision they represent for the Steelers moving forward? Moving deeper into this mock draft, day 3 is where the vision really expands from fixing obvious needs to layering the roster with options, competition, and long-term insurance. Round 4 immediately goes back to the wide receiver position, and that alone tells you how seriously the need is being treated. Ted Hurst out of Georgia State is a very different profile from my Lemon, and that contrast feels intentional. Hurst is described as a bigger, lankier target with strong contested catchability and impressive body control along the sideline. What elevates his projection is how he performed during Senior Bowl practices, where he looked like he belonged against higher-level competition. The concern about level of competition is acknowledged, but the tape from that week suggests he has legitimate NFL traits. When you picture Hurst paired with DK Metcalf and my Lemon, the idea is balance, size, physicality, separation, and versatility all working together. This is about building a receiver room that can win in multiple ways, not just relying on one archetype. Still in round 4, the Steelers go back to the offensive line with Caden Rutledge out of Georgia Tech. This pick reinforces a very clear philosophy. You can never have enough quality offensive linemen. Rutledge is described as a guard with strong hands, someone who locks onto defenders and does not let go. Combined with Logan Jones, this creates both immediate depth and future competition at left guard. The plan here is patience. Let these players develop, learn the system, and battle for starting roles while ensuring that injuries or underperformance do not derail the offense. It is a quiet but essential part of roster building. Round 5 introduces the most intriguing conversation of the entire mock quarterback. Drew Aller is selected here, and while his consensus board position suggests this might be optimistic, the logic behind the pick is very clear. Arm talent like his does not come around often, and pairing him with Aaron Rodgers for a year creates an environment focused on learning and refinement. This selection does not eliminate Will Howard from the equation. Instead, it creates competition. Aller and Howard would both develop behind Rodgers, absorbing Mike McCarthy's offense. With the understanding that neither is guaranteed the future job, this is about throwing darts until you find the answer. Even if neither becomes the long-term solution, the Steelers would still be positioned to attack the quarterback position again in 2027. The key point is that the team cannot stop investing in the position just because the answer is not obvious yet. In round 6, the defense gets another injection of athleticism with Jaden Kennedy, a slot corner out of Oregon. Kennedy stood out during Shrine Bowl practices, consistently winning one-on-one matchups despite being undersized. His projection is clear, a slot-only defender at the NFL level, but one who brings quickness, competitiveness, and coverage ability. This is the type of player who can carve out a role quickly, especially in sub-packages, and potentially contribute on special teams early in his career. Right after that comes Desmond Reed, a running back out of Pittsburgh. Reed is viewed as a versatile offensive weapon, someone who can catch passes, run routes, and contribute after the catch. His value is tied to flexibility within the running back rotation, especially depending on the futures of Kenny Gainwell and Jalen Warren. Reed also carries potential special teams value, which is often the fastest path to a roster spot for a late-round pick. This is a depth move, but one with upside if circumstances break the right way. Round 7 continues to prioritize defensive upside. Mason Rager, an edge rusher out of Wisconsin, is highlighted as a standout performer at the Shrine Bowl, earning defensive MVP honors. His ability to consistently pressure quarterbacks and his strong week of practice make him an appealing developmental edge rusher. The Steelers' history with Wisconsin edge defenders only adds to the intrigue. As a fourth edge rusher, Rager would not be asked to carry the load immediately, but could develop into a reliable rotational piece. The final pick goes to Caleb Proctor, an undersized but explosive defensive lineman out of southeastern Louisiana. At around 280 pounds, Proctor is lighter than traditional interior linemen, but that is part of what makes him interesting. In a base 3-4 defense, he profiles as a 5 technique who wins with quickness, hand usage, and get-off. His Shrine Bowl performance showcased his ability to disrupt quarterbacks, and his speed gives him a niche role on passing downs. This is a projection pick, betting on traits and fit within Patrick Graham's defensive structure. When you step back and look at the entire draft, the picture becomes clear. This is about building layers, immediate contributors mixed with developmental players, answers today paired with options for tomorrow, weapons for the quarterback, reinforcements for the trenches, and competition at critical positions. Nothing here feels random. Every pick connects to a broader plan. What makes this mock draft conversation resonate is that it mirrors the uncertainty and patience the Steelers are living through right now. There is no single move here pretending to magically solve everything. Instead, it reflects an understanding that roster construction is cumulative. Each pick stacks on top of the last one, creating optionality, leverage, and flexibility for the front office moving forward. That is especially clear when you consider how many of these selections are directly connected to future decisions that have not yet been finalized, whether that is at quarterback, linebacker, or along the offensive line. This approach also acknowledges something fans know all too well: the Steelers cannot afford to be passive. Standing still at key positions has cost them momentum in recent seasons, and this draft philosophy pushes against that. 2 wide receivers early is not overkill, it is an admission that the offense needs variety and reliability. Multiple offensive linemen is not redundancy, it is protection against the reality of injuries and inconsistency. Taking a quarterback on day 3 is not desperation, it is responsible roster management when no long-term answer has been established. Defensively, the theme is correction. A true nose tackle, a linebacker with 3-down potential, versatile secondary pieces, and rotational pass rushers all point to a defense that wants to be structurally sound again. again. Not flashy, not dependent on one superstar, but layered, physical, and adaptable. The idea is to let the scheme work because the personnel actually fits the roles being asked of them. When you put all of this together, this mock draft feels less like speculation and more like a conversation about identity. What kind of team are the Steelers trying to be in the next 2 to 3 years? This vision suggests a team that wants to compete immediately without sacrificing the future. One that understands the urgency of the present but refuses to mortgage what comes next. It is a slow burn approach, and those are always harder to sell, but they are often the ones that last. There is also an important emotional layer to this draft that connects directly with the fan base, and it comes from how familiar this philosophy feels. This is not a rebuild that waves a white flag, and it is not a reckless push that ignores the future. It sits in that uncomfortable middle ground where patience is required, and that is often the hardest sell in Pittsburgh. But when you walk through each selection again with that lens, you start to see a front office mindset that is trying to eliminate excuses before they appear. If the offense struggles, it will not be because the quarterback lacks options. 2 receivers drafted, one polished and immediate, the other developmental with size and upside, paired with DK Metcalf, directly address years of inconsistency at the position. If protection becomes an issue, the investment in interior offensive linemen gives the coaching staff flexibility, competition, and depth. If the quarterback position remains unsettled, the team has at least continued to invest in talent rather than pretending the problem does not exist. On defense, the message is even clearer. No more patchwork solutions. A legitimate nose tackle changes how the entire front functions. A linebacker with the physical tools to stay on the field for all 3 downs prepares the defense for potential cap-driven departures. Versatile defensive backs and rotational pass rushers ensure that injuries or fatigue do not completely derail the unit. This is how you build a defense that survives a full season, not just a highlight reel. What also stands out is how many of these players are projected to contribute in specific, realistic roles rather than being asked to do everything at once. That matters. Young players fail when they are overloaded early. Here, the expectations feel measured. Learn, compete, earn snaps, grow. That developmental patience aligns with a coaching staff that values structure and progression over chaos. This mock does not promise stars at every turn, but it does promise clarity. Every pick answers a question the roster is already asking. That alone makes it compelling. Whether or not every name hits is almost secondary to the process itself. The Steelers are being framed as a team that understands where it is, what it lacks, and how to move forward without shortcuts. Another layer that cannot be ignored in this conversation is how this draft philosophy reflects risk management more than risk avoidance. There is a difference, and it matters. The Steelers here are not avoiding risk by playing it safe at every turn. They are managing it by spreading it out. Instead of putting all their hopes into one massive swing, they are placing calculated bets across multiple positions that historically decide whether a season survives adversity.